Welcome to ZenLight 8, where we uncover the light within every soul. Today, picture a woman walking alone through the chaos of life. Not because she's lonely, but because she's chosen the path of strength, freedom, and resilience. In a world where people chase crowds to fill the silence, she stands tall, needing no one to validate her worth. What makes a woman like this so extraordinary? Join us on ZenLight 8 as we dive into this inspiring journey, where independence isn't just a way of life, but an endless source of power to shine. The power of independence. In life, there are moments when a woman faces a choice: to blend into the crowd or to walk alone on a path distinctly her own. Choosing to walk alone doesn't always stem from a desire within her. More often, it's the result of a profound realization that the people around her don't reflect the intrinsic worth she carries within, that they don't resonate with the essence of her soul. This isn't about isolation or the sorrow of solitude. Rather, it's a meaningful journey, one where she uncovers the hidden strength that lies deep inside. Independence, in this context, isn't just a state of being. It's a powerful force, enabling her to stand firmly on her own 2 feet without needing others to affirm her value or define who she is. Independence in a woman isn't something that comes naturally or arrives overnight. It isn't handed to her like a gift from the universe. Instead, it's the product of a long, deliberate process, forged through trials, experiences, and often the quiet depths of her own introspection. When she chooses to stand alone, it doesn't mean she's rejecting connection or turning away from love and friendship. It simply means she's come to understand that true strength doesn't depend on the number of people surrounding her, but on her ability to face the world and herself without relying on anyone else as a crutch. This is a rare kind of strength, a resilience that not everyone dares to embrace. Imagine a world where people often seek companionship simply to fill the void within. They surround themselves with laughter, conversation, and relationships to chase away loneliness, to feel as though they belong somewhere. But a woman who chooses to walk alone is different. She doesn't flee from silence or tremble at the thought of facing herself. Instead, she embraces it, turning it into a space where she can hear her inner voice, where she can understand herself more deeply than ever before. Silence isn't her enemy, it's her companion, a place where she finds peace and a power that no one else can provide. When a woman stands tall without leaning on a network of friends or the validation of others, she isn't just surviving, she's thriving. This is a crucial distinction. To live isn't merely to breathe or to pass through each day. It's to feel the profound worth of oneself in every moment. She knows that her strength doesn't come from external praise or the approving glances of others, but from an inner reservoir she's cultivated herself. It's an unshakable confidence, a belief that she's strong enough to face any challenge life throws her way. In a society that often glorifies connection, where a person's value is sometimes measured by the size of their social circle or their popularity, choosing to walk alone can be misunderstood as odd or weak. But in truth, it requires extraordinary courage. To reject the pressure to fit in, to step forward without someone holding her hand, demands a stout heart and a clear mind. She isn't afraid of judgment, of curious stares, or of whispers behind her back. She knows that her path, though solitary, is the right one. Not because it's easy, but because it's honest to who she is. This independence isn't about closing herself off or shutting out the world. A woman who chooses to walk alone isn't someone who turns her back on every relationship or rejects the warmth of companionship. Instead, she places herself in a position where relationships don't define her, where she doesn't rely on them to feel worthy. It's a subtle but vital difference. She can love, she can connect, but she doesn't need those things to survive. When she enters a relationship, it's because she wants to, not because she has to. This creates a rare balance, a freedom that few truly grasp. Moreover, independence grants her the power to shape her own life. Free from the sway of others' opinions or expectations, she can listen to her own voice, a voice often drowned out by the noise of the world. She doesn't need someone to tell her she's on the right track or to dictate what she must do to feel happy. Instead, she finds her answers within, drawing on her experiences, intuition, and the values she holds dear. This is a form of freedom many long for but few pursue. Another facet of this strength is her ability to face adversity without crumbling. When life grows tough, when doors close, when those once by her side drift away, she doesn't panic or seek solace in others to pull her through. Instead, she turns inward, tapping into a reserve of strength she's built over time. It's a resilience honed through long nights of reflection, through days when she picked herself up after every fall. She knows that even if the world turns its back, she has enough within her to keep moving forward. Independence also offers her a clear vision of herself and her life. Unburdened by societal expectations or the pressures of friends, she can see what truly matters to her. She doesn't chase fleeting trends or strive to become someone others want her to be. Instead, she focuses on what aligns with her soul, what brings real meaning to her existence. This is a level of self-awareness not everyone achieves, for it requires the courage to face oneself, to ask questions, and to seek answers without leaning on others. Consider how this independence shapes her daily existence. Without the constant need to conform or please those around her, she's free to craft a life that reflects her truest self. She wakes each day not to meet someone else's standards, but to pursue her own goals, her own peace. She might spend her time honing a skill, exploring a passion, or simply sitting in quiet contemplation. Choices that serve her growth rather than her image. This freedom isn't just empowering. It's transformative, allowing her to live with an authenticity that radiates from within. Her strength also lies in her ability to weather life's storms alone. When relationships falter or opportunities vanish, she doesn't collapse under the weight of disappointment. She's learned to stand firm, to draw on her inner resources rather than seeking external rescue. This doesn't mean she's immune to pain. She feels it deeply, but she's mastered the art of rising again, of finding light even in the darkest moments. Her independence becomes her anchor, keeping her steady when the world around her shifts. This path of independence isn't without its challenges. Society often pushes the narrative that happiness is tied to companionship, that a full life requires a bustling social circle. To go against this grain, to choose solitude over the crowd, can invite misunderstanding or even pity. Yet she doesn't waver. She sees through the illusion that more friends equal more worth. She knows that her value isn't diminished by her choice to walk alone. If anything, it's enhanced, polished by her refusal to settle for anything less than what aligns with her spirit. Ultimately, the power of independence lies in the ownership it gives her over her life. When a woman chooses to walk alone, she's not just rejecting reliance on others. She's declaring that she is enough. Enough to face the world, enough to overcome hardship, enough to live fully without anyone else's stamp of approval. This isn't arrogance. It's a profound confidence born from knowing her worth. She doesn't need friends to feel significant, doesn't need a crowd to feel she belongs. She belongs to herself, and that's the most powerful belonging of all. In a world where connection is often seen as the yardstick of happiness, a woman who chooses independence serves as a reminder that true joy doesn't hinge on how many people surround you, but on the quality of the relationship you have with yourself. When she stands alone, she isn't lonely. She's living, growing, and shining in a way that's uniquely hers. The power of independence isn't just the ability to exist without others. It's the ability to live fully, deeply, and authentically from within. Self-reliance and resilience. Independence is often misunderstood as a rejection of connection, a deliberate turning away from the warmth of relationships. But for a woman who embodies self-reliance, it's something far more profound. It's not about closing the door on others. It's about opening a window to the truth that her strength originates from within. She doesn't shun companionship out of disdain or fear. Rather, she recognizes that her ability to stand tall doesn't hinge on the presence of others, but on the unshakable foundation she's built inside herself. This realization is the heartbeat of her resilience, a quiet power that sustains her through life's inevitable storms. When others walk away, when the world shifts beneath her feet, she doesn't crumble. Instead, she draws on an inner fortitude, a well of strength she's cultivated over time, to rise above adversity. Self-reliance isn't a trait that appears fully formed. It's not a gift bestowed at birth or a skill mastered overnight. It's It's a muscle, strengthened through practice, persistence, and the courage to face moments of solitude and challenge head-on. For this woman, independence is a journey, a process of learning to trust herself, to rely on her own instincts and resources rather than seeking external crutches. It begins, perhaps, in small moments. A decision made alone, a problem solved without input, a quiet evening spent in her own company. Over time, these moments weave together into a tapestry of confidence, a belief that she is enough to navigate whatever comes her way. This kind of strength is deeply personal. It's not loud or ostentatious. It doesn't demand attention or applause. It's the silent resolve that carries her through the night when doubts creep in, the steady hand that guides her when the path ahead is unclear. She understands that relationships, while valuable, are not the source of her power. Friends may offer laughter, lovers may bring comfort, but her ability to endure, to thrive, comes from a place no one else can touch. This isn't a denial of connection. It's an affirmation that she doesn't need it to define her worth or hold her upright. Consider the moments when life tests her most fiercely. Perhaps a friendship fades, a partnership dissolves, or a dream slips through her fingers. In a world where many might turn to others for solace, seeking a shoulder to cry on or a voice to reassure them, she turns inward, not out of pride or stubbornness, but because she knows that within her lies everything she needs to weather the storm. She doesn't collapse under the weight of loss or rejection. Instead, she stands firm, rooted in a resilience that has been forged through countless unseen battles. This is the essence of self-reliance, the ability to be her own anchor when the tides of life pull hard. This resilience isn't about pretending pain doesn't exist. She's not immune to sorrow or untouched by hardship. She feels the sting of disappointment, the ache of loneliness, the frustration of setbacks. But what sets her apart is how she responds. Where others might falter, seeking someone to lift them up, she lifts herself. She sits with her emotions, processes them, and finds a way forward. Not because it's easy, but because she's learned that she can. This capacity to confront her struggles without falling apart is a testament to the strength she's nurtured within. A strength that doesn't waver even when the world around her does. Self-reliance also means freedom from dependency. In a society that often encourages leaning on others, whether for emotional support, validation, or guidance, she chooses a different path. She doesn't wait for someone to tell her she's doing well or to point her in the right direction. She trusts her own judgment, her own compass. This doesn't mean she's arrogant or dismissive of advice. It means she's secure enough to weigh it against her own instincts and choose what aligns with her truth. This independence of thought is liberating, allowing her to move through life with a clarity that comes from knowing she's the architect of her own destiny. Picture her in a moment of crisis. The phone doesn't ring with offers of help. The room is empty of comforting voices. Yet she doesn't panic. She takes a deep breath, steadies herself, and begins to work through the problem. Maybe it's a practical challenge, a flat tire, a looming deadline, or maybe it's emotional, a heartbreak, a betrayal. Whatever it is, she meets it with a quiet determination. She's learned that she doesn't need someone else to fix things for her, that she's capable of finding solutions, of piecing herself back together. This isn't just survival, it's mastery, a proof of her ability to rely on herself when it matters most. This self-reliance extends beyond the tangible into the realm of the spirit. She's not just resilient in action but in her very being. When doubt creeps in, when she questions her worth, her path, her purpose, she doesn't look to others to affirm her. She looks within, drawing on a wellspring of self-belief that she's carefully tended. She knows that external validation, while pleasant, is fleeting. It's the internal conviction that endures. This inner dialogue becomes her strength, a conversation between her heart and mind that keeps her grounded no matter what the world throws at her. Her resilience shines brightest in the face of abandonment. When people leave, whether by choice, circumstance, or the natural drift of life, she doesn't see it as a reflection of her value. She doesn't cling to what's gone or spiral into despair. Instead, she accepts it as part of the human experience and moves forward. She's not impervious to the pain of loss, but she refuses to let it define her. She's built a core so strong that it can withstand the departure of others, a foundation that doesn't crack under the weight of solitude. This is where her self-reliance transforms into something extraordinary, the ability to remain whole even when the pieces around her fall away. This strength isn't static. It grows with every challenge she overcomes. Each time she faces adversity alone and emerges stronger, she adds another layer to her resilience. It's a quiet evolution, one that happens not in grand gestures but in the small, steady steps she takes to keep going. She learns from her mistakes, adapts to her circumstances, and refines her ability to stand on her own. This growth isn't loud or showy. It's the kind of transformation that reveals itself in her calm demeanor, her steady gaze, her unshaken resolve. Self-reliance also empowers her to set boundaries. When you depend on yourself, you become acutely aware of what serves you and what doesn't. She doesn't let others drain her energy or dictate her choices, not because she's cold, but because she values her own well-being. She's learned to say no when necessary, to protect her peace without guilt. This isn't selfishness. It's wisdom, a recognition that she can't pour from an empty cup. By safeguarding her inner strength, she ensures she has enough to give when she chooses to on her terms. In relationships, this self-reliance creates a dynamic of equality rather than neediness. She doesn't enter connections out of desperation or a fear of being alone. She brings her whole self to the table, not a fragment seeking completion. This allows her to love deeply without losing herself, to support others without sacrificing her own stability. Her resilience ensures that even if those relationships falter, she remains intact, ready to walk forward alone if need be. Her independence also fosters a profound sense of agency. She's not a passive participant in her life, waiting for someone to guide her or rescue her. She takes the reins, makes decisions, and accepts the consequences, good or bad, with grace. This ownership over her path gives her a quiet power, a confidence that radiates without words. She knows that she's not at the mercy of fate or the whims of others. She's the one shaping her story. Ultimately, self-reliance and resilience are two sides of the same coin. A coin she's minted through her own efforts. She doesn't collapse when others leave because she's already whole. She overcomes adversity not by chance but by choice, tapping into an inner strength that's uniquely hers. This isn't about denying the value of relationships. It's about affirming that her power doesn't depend on them. She stands as a testament to what's possible when a woman trusts herself, when she builds a life not on the shifting sands of external support but on the solid rock of her own spirit. In a world that often equates strength with numbers, she redefines it. She proves that true power doesn't come from how many stand beside you but from how firmly you stand within yourself. Her self-reliance is her shield, her resilience her sword, tools she wields not to isolate but to thrive. When the dust settles and the noise fades, she remains, unbroken and unwavering. A woman who knows that no matter what, she has everything she needs within her to rise again. Quality over quantity in relationships. In a world obsessed with numbers, how many followers, how many likes, how many friends, a woman who chooses quality over quantity in her relationships stands apart. She doesn't measure her worth by the size of her social circle or the noise of a crowded room. Instead, she seeks something deeper, something truer. Connections that resonate with her soul, that reflect authenticity rather than superficiality. For her, relationships aren't about filling space or chasing the illusion of popularity. They're about meaning, depth, and mutual understanding. She'd rather have a handful of genuine bonds than a sea of shallow acquaintances, and she's unafraid to let go of ties that no longer serve her, all in the name of safeguarding her peace. This choice isn't impulsive or born from a fleeting whim. It's a deliberate stance, rooted in a profound understanding of what relationships can and should be. She's seen the emptiness of crowded gatherings where conversations skim the surface, where smiles mask indifference, and where presence doesn't equate to care. She's witnessed how people often cling to large groups out of fear, a need to belong, or a desire to drown out their own silence. But she's different. She's not swayed by the allure of numbers or the pressure to appear connected. She knows that a dozen shallow friendships can't compare to one that runs deep, one that withstands time and trial. Quality, to her, means authenticity. It's the friend who listens not just to reply but to understand. The one who sees her, truly sees her, beyond the masks she might wear for the world. It's the connection where words can be sparse but the silence is comfortable, where vulnerability isn't a risk but a gift. She craves conversations that dig beneath small talk, that explore dreams, fears, and the messy beauty of being human. These are the bonds she treasures, the ones she invests her time and heart in, because they nourish her in ways a crowded party never could. This preference for depth over breadth doesn't mean she's antisocial or dismissive of others. She's not building walls to keep people out. She's simply selective about who she lets in. She values relationships, but she refuses to settle for those that feel forced, draining, or inauthentic. She's learned that not everyone deserves a seat at her table, and that's not arrogance, it's discernment. She's willing to walk away from connections that no longer align with her spirit, even if it means standing alone for a while. This courage to release what doesn't fit is a strength few possess, a testament to her commitment to her own well-being. Letting go isn't easy. Relationships, even flawed ones, often carry history, shared laughter, late-night talks, moments of comfort. But she's wise enough to recognize when the scales tip, when the energy she gives outweighs what she receives, when the bond becomes more obligation than joy. She doesn't cling out of nostalgia or fear of solitude. She knows that holding onto something toxic or unfulfilling doesn't honor the past. It dishonors her present. So, she releases it, not with bitterness, but with a quiet resolve to protect her peace, to make space for what truly matters. This focus on quality shapes how she approaches new relationships, too. She's not in a rush to fill her life with people just to avoid emptiness. She's patient, deliberate, taking the time to peel back layers, to see intentions, to test alignment. She's not seeking perfection. No one is flawless, but she's looking for realness. If a connection feels performative or one-sided, she steps back, unafraid to let it fade. She'd rather wait for the right people, the ones who match her wavelength, than force a fit that doesn't feel right. This patience is her power, a refusal to compromise her standards for the sake of appearances. Society often pushes a different narrative. The more friends, the better. It's a world where social success is measured by invitations, group photos, and packed calendars. But she sees through this facade. She knows that a large circle can be loud yet lonely, busy yet barren. She's not interested in the optics of connection, the Instagram-worthy gatherings, or the validation of being seen. She's after substance, the kind that doesn't need a filter or a crowd to prove its worth. This clarity sets her free from the trap of comparison, from the pressure to keep up with a game she never signed up to play. Her small circle, though sparse, is rich. These are the people she can call at midnight when the world feels heavy, the ones who challenge her to grow, who celebrate her without envy. They're not there to fill a void. They're there because they add value, because the bond is reciprocal and real. She doesn't need a dozen voices to feel heard. One that truly listens is enough. She doesn't need 100 hands to lift her up. A few steady ones will do. This is the beauty of quality. It's not about volume, but resonance. This approach also brings her peace. When your relationships are few but meaningful, there's less noise, less drama, less pretense. She's not stretched thin trying to please everyone or maintain ties that don't fit. She has the space to be present, to invest fully in the people who matter. She's not juggling superficial obligations or dodging toxic dynamics. She's cultivating a garden of connections that bloom with trust and respect. This simplicity is her sanctuary, a refuge from the chaos that often comes with chasing quantity. Her willingness to let go also reflects her self-assurance. She doesn't fear being alone because she's comfortable with herself. She doesn't need a crowd to feel secure. Her security comes from within. This inner strength allows her to walk away from relationships that dim her light, knowing that her peace is worth more than the illusion of belonging. It's a bold choice, one that requires confidence in her own worth, a belief that she doesn't need to hoard connections to prove she's enough. This mindset ripples into every corner of her life. By prioritizing quality, she learns to value depth in all things: her work, her passions, her time. She's not swayed by the glitter of popularity or the lure of being everywhere at once. She digs into what's real, what lasts, what feeds her soul. This isn't just about friendships. It's a philosophy, a way of living that rejects the hollow and embraces the profound. She knows that a single true connection can outweigh 100 fleeting ones, just as a single purposeful moment can outshine a lifetime of noise. Her relationships, though few, are a mirror of her values. They reflect her integrity, her honesty, her desire for growth. She surrounds herself with people who lift her higher, not because they have to, but because they want to, just as she does for them. This mutual elevation is what she seeks, a dynamic where both sides thrive, not just survive. She's not collecting friends like trophies. She's building bonds like bridges, sturdy and enduring. This choice also demands resilience. Walking away from relationships, especially long-standing ones, can stir doubt. Was she too harsh? Should she have tried harder? But she trusts her instincts, knowing that preserving her energy outweighs preserving a facade. She's not afraid of the temporary sting of loss because she's playing the long game, investing in a life where every connection counts, where her heart isn't cluttered with half-truths or lukewarm ties. In moments of solitude, she finds clarity. Without the chatter of a large circle, she can hear herself think, feel, dream. She doesn't mistake this quiet for loneliness. It's freedom, a chance to reconnect with her own spirit. And when she does choose to share that space with others, it's intentional, a gift given to those who've earned it. Her relationships aren't a crutch. They're a choice, a complement to the strength she already carries. This focus on quality over quantity isn't just practical, it's liberating. It frees her from the exhausting race to be everyone's friend, from the guilt of not keeping up with every acquaintance. She's not bound by societal scorecards or the expectation to be perpetually social. She's carved out a life where depth trumps breadth, where her peace isn't negotiable, where her connections are as strong as they are scarce. In the end, a woman who chooses quality over quantity redefines what relationships mean. She proves that it's not the size of the circle that matters, but the souls within it. She's not chasing the crowd. She's curating a constellation, a few bright stars that light her way far more than 1,000 dim ones ever could. By seeking depth over distraction, she protects her peace, honors her worth, and builds a life where every bond is a treasure, not a burden. This is her strength, her truth, her quiet revolution against a world that too often settles for less. Self-reflection and personal growth. Solitude is often seen as a void, a space to be filled with noise, company, or distraction. But for a woman who embraces it, solitude is a gift, an open canvas where she can paint a truer picture of herself. It's in these quiet moments, free from the clamor of others' voices, that she finds the rare opportunity to turn inward, to reflect deeply on who she is, what she wants, and how she can grow. This isn't a retreat from the world. It's an advance into her own soul, a chance to uncover her desires, strengths, and weaknesses without the filter of external opinions. Solitude becomes her teacher, her mirror, her crucible, shaping her into a version of herself that's stronger, wiser, and more authentic. Self-reflection doesn't come easily in a world that thrives on constant connection. When surrounded by friends, family, or the hum of social expectations, it's tempting to define oneself by roles, daughter, sister, confidant, or by the feedback of others. But when those voices fall silent, when the stage is empty, what remains? For her, this is where the journey begins. Alone with her thoughts, she's no longer a reflection of someone else's gaze. She's just herself. Raw, unscripted, and unguarded. It's a space where she can ask the big questions. What drives me? What scares me? Who am I when no one's watching? These aren't simple queries. They demand honesty, courage, and a willingness to sit with discomfort. This process isn't about self-criticism or tearing herself apart. It's about curiosity, a gentle excavation of her inner landscape. She digs into her past, not to dwell but to understand. What experiences shaped her? What patterns keep surfacing? She examines her desires, not the ones she's been told to want, but the ones that whisper to her in the quiet. She maps her strengths, the resilience she didn't know she had, the creativity she's yet to fully tap, and her weaknesses, the doubts that linger, the habits that hold her back. This isn't a quick glance in the mirror. It's a deep dive, a commitment to knowing herself beyond the surface. Solitude strips away the distractions that so often cloud self-awareness. Without friends to bounce ideas off, without the chatter of a group to drown out her thoughts, she hears her own voice clearly, perhaps for the first time. It's a voice that's been there all along, muffled by the need to please, to fit in, to respond. Now, in the stillness, it speaks with authority, tells her what she values, what she needs, what she's outgrown. It's not always a comfortable conversation. Sometimes it reveals truths she'd rather avoid, but it's necessary. This unfiltered dialogue with herself is the root of her growth, the seed from which her transformation blooms. Personal growth, she discovers, isn't a destination. It's a journey, a continuous unfolding. Every moment of reflection adds a layer to her understanding, a step to her evolution. Solitude gives her the freedom to chart this path without interference. There's no pressure to conform to someone else's timeline, no need to adjust her pace to match the crowd. She can linger on a lesson as long as she needs, revisit a wound until it heals, celebrate a triumph without downplaying it for others' comfort. This independence of growth is empowering. It's hers alone, shaped by her hands, guided by her heart. In this space, she confronts what she's avoided. Relationships can be a shield, a way to sidestep the hard stuff. Old hurts, buried insecurities, unmet dreams. With friends around, it's easy to distract herself, to fill the silence with laughter or advice. But alone, there's nowhere to hide. She faces her shadows head-on, the regrets she's carried, the fears she's ignored, the goals she's let slip. It's not pleasant work, but it's liberating. By looking at these pieces of herself, she begins to let go of what weighs her down, to rewrite the stories that no longer serve her. This confrontation is a form of healing, a shedding of baggage that leaves her lighter, freer, stronger. Solitude also reveals her resilience. Without others to lean on, she learns she's tougher than she thought. She handles challenges, big and small, on her own terms, discovering a resourcefulness she didn't know she possessed. A late-night worry, a sudden setback, a quiet doubt. She meets them all with her own grit. She doesn't need a chorus of reassurance to keep going. She finds the strength within. This realization builds a deep trust in herself, a confidence that she can weather any storm, not because she's invincible, but because she's capable. This trust becomes her foundation. When she trusts herself, she stops second-guessing her instincts. She makes decisions with clarity, not clouded by the need for approval. She knows her limits and pushes past them when it matters. This self-reliance isn't just practical, it's spiritual. It's a belief that she's enough, that her inner compass is true. It frees her from the cycle of seeking validation, from the weight of wondering if she's measuring up. She measures herself by her own standards, and that's a powerful shift. Self-reflection also brings moments of celebration. Alone, she can pause to honor her victories, big wins and small steps, without brushing them off or waiting for someone else to notice. She sees how far she's come, how she's grown through the years, through the tears. She acknowledges the quiet courage it took to keep going, the creativity she's unleashed, the kindness she's shown herself. This self-acknowledgement isn't vanity, it's fuel. It reinforces her worth, reminding her that she's a work in progress, but a beautiful one. Through this journey, she gains clarity about her future. Solitude strips away the noise of others' expectations, leaving her free to dream her own dreams. What does she want? Not for her friends, her family, or society, but for herself. She sets goals that align with her soul, not someone else's script. She imagines a career that lights her up, a life that feels true, relationships that enrich rather than drain. Without the pull of external voices, she can hear her own aspirations, and she begins to build toward them with intention. This purpose becomes her North Star, guiding her through the haze. Growth in solitude isn't loud or flashy. is not about grand announcements or overnight makeovers. It's quiet, steady, profound, a gradual becoming. She doesn't need an audience to validate it. The change is in her posture, her choices, her peace. She learns to nurture herself, her mind with books, her body with movement, her spirit with stillness. She carves out rituals that ground her, habits that strengthen her. This self-care isn't indulgent. It's essential, a way to keep her flame burning bright. This process also deepens her independence. Without others' opinions shaping her, she forms her own views, untainted by groupthink. She sees the world through her own lens, not a borrowed one. This originality of thought sets her apart. It's a strength born from standing alone, from wrestling with her own questions. She's not afraid to disagree, to diverge, to be herself. This authenticity isn't just a byproduct of reflection. It's the goal, the reward of knowing who she is and owning it fully. Solitude also teaches her patience. Growth doesn't rush, it unfolds. She learns to be gentle with herself, to accept that some lessons take time, that some wounds heal slowly. She doesn't force progress or berate herself for stumbles. Instead, she walks alongside herself, a steady companion on this inner journey. This grace is a form of strength, a quiet power that keeps her moving forward without breaking. In the end, self-reflection and personal growth in solitude aren't about isolation. They're about connection, the deepest kind, with herself. She emerges not as someone diminished by the lack of others, but as someone enriched by her own presence. She understands her desires, harnesses her strengths, softens her weaknesses, and grows into a woman who's not just surviving, but thriving. Solitude becomes her sanctuary, a place where she's free to evolve without apology, to become the fullest expression of herself. This journey isn't for everyone. It takes courage to face oneself, to grow without a cheering squad. But for her, it's worth it. She knows that the truest growth happens in the quiet, that the most enduring strength is forged alone. She doesn't lack for company. She has the best companion of all, herself. And with that, she's unstoppable. A woman who's learned that the path to wholeness begins within, lit by the steady glow of her own reflection. Living authentically, in a world that often equates worth with popularity, where the size of one's social circle or adherence to societal norms defines success. A woman who chooses to live authentically stands as a quiet rebel. She doesn't bend to the pressure to collect friends like trophies or conform to the rigid expectations laid out for her. Instead, she carves her own path, guided by an inner compass that points to her truth rather than the world's applause. Independence, for her, isn't just a state of being. It's a declaration of self, a refusal to let external forces dictate her life. She lives on her terms, rooted in a confidence that springs from within, unshaken by the need for outside validation. This choice to live authentically isn't a sudden epiphany or a casual decision. It's a deliberate act, born from a deep understanding of who she is and what she values. Society bombards her with messages. You must be surrounded by friends to be happy. You must follow the script: marriage, career, social status. By a certain age, you must fit the mold to be worthy. But she sees through this noise. She knows that these are hollow metrics, superficial yardsticks that measure appearance rather than essence. For her, happiness isn't a crowded room or a checklist. It's a life that feels true, a life that reflects her soul, not someone else's blueprint. Living authentically means rejecting the trap of conformity. It's easy to fall into the rhythm of pleasing others, to say yes when she means no, to chase trends she doesn't care for, all to avoid standing out or being judged. But she's not interested in playing that game. She's not here to perform, to wear a mask, or to shrink herself into a shape that fits someone else's vision. She asks herself, what do I want? What feels right for me? And she listens, really listens, to the answers that bubble up from within. These answers don't always align with the crowd, but that's the point. Her life isn't a mirror of society's expectations. It's a canvas of her own design. This authenticity requires courage. To step away from the herd, to say no to the pressure of having a bustling social life when she prefers solitude or a few close bonds, takes guts. She knows the world might raise an eyebrow, Call her aloof, strange, or lonely, but she doesn't flinch. She's not swayed by the whispers or the pitying glances. She's secure in her choice because it's hers, not borrowed or imposed. This confidence isn't loud or boastful. It's a quiet certainty, a steady flame that burns regardless of who's watching. Her independence is her strength. She doesn't need a chorus of friends to affirm her value or a packed calendar to prove her relevance. She finds her worth in her own heart, in the talents she nurtures, the principles she holds, the way she moves through the world. This self-assurance isn't arrogance, it's liberation. It frees her from the exhausting dance of seeking approval, from the weight of wondering if she's enough in others' eyes. She knows she's enough because she's defined it for herself, not because someone else has stamped it on her. Living authentically often grows out of solitude and reflection. Alone, she's had the space to peel back the layers, to question the rules she's been handed, to sift through what's hers and what's been pressed upon her. She's asked, who am I beneath the roles I play? What do I believe when no one's telling me what to think? In these moments, she's discovered her core, the unshakable parts of herself that don't bend to fit the world's mold. This self-knowledge becomes her anchor, guiding her choices, steadying her when the pressure to conform creeps in. This way of living brings a rare freedom. When she stops caring what others think, stops measuring herself by their standards, she can breathe. She doesn't need to hustle for acceptance or twist herself into someone she's not. She can pursue what lights her up, whether it's a quiet passion others might not understand or a bold dream that defies convention. She can spend her days in solitude if that's what feeds her, or connect with a few souls who get her without apology. This liberation isn't just empowering, it's peaceful, a release from the chains of expectation. Authenticity doesn't mean she rejects all connection. She's not an island, cut off from the world. She values relationships deeply, but she's selective about them. She surrounds herself with people who see her for who she is, not who they want her to be. She seeks bonds built on mutual respect, honesty, and understanding, not convenience or social clout. These connections aren't numerous, but they're rich, woven from trust rather than obligation. She doesn't need a crowd to feel included. She feels it in the quiet moments with those who matter, or in the stillness of her own company. Her journey isn't about fitting into someone else's timeline. Society loves its milestones, friends by this age, success by that one, but she's not racing to meet them. She knows life isn't a one-size-fits-all script. Her path might look different, slower, quieter, less crowded, and she's okay with that. She's not here to check boxes or keep pace with the Joneses. She's here to grow at her own rhythm, to find joy in her own way, to build a life that's hers, not a replica of someone else's. This patience, this trust in her own process, is a strength that sets her apart. Living authentically means making choices with integrity. She doesn't say yes to please or no to rebel. She does what feels right for her. She's not swayed by guilt trips or the fear of being left out. If a social event doesn't spark her interest, she skips it without regret. If a friendship fades because it no longer fits, she lets it go with grace. Her decisions reflect her values, not the world's demands. This alignment brings a peace that's hard to shake, a sense that she's living true, not just living loud. This authenticity shines in how she carries herself. There's no pretense in her step, no need to prove anything. She's not chasing the spotlight or curating an image for likes. She shows up as herself, flaws, quirks, and all. And that's her power. She's not perfect, and she doesn't pretend to be. She's real, and that realness draws the right people, the right opportunities like moths to a flame. They come not for what she projects, but for what she is, unfiltered, unapologetic, whole. She becomes a quiet inspiration, whether she knows it or not. Others see her. A woman who doesn't bow to pressure, who lives by her own rules, and it stirs something in them. She doesn't preach or proselytize. She simply exists, and that existence challenges the status quo. She gives permission, silently, for others to question the norms, to step off the treadmill of conformity, to find their own way. Her authenticity is a ripple, touching lives she may never even meet, proving that a life lived true is a life that resonates. This path isn't always smooth. There are moments of doubt, when the world's judgment stings, when solitude feels heavy, when the pull to blend in tugs hard. But she pushes through, not because she's fearless, but because she's committed. She knows that the alternative, living someone else's life, chasing someone else's approval, is a far greater cost. She'd rather wrestle with her own questions than settle for borrowed answers. This resilience, this stubborn loyalty to herself, is what keeps her authentic. Her confidence in her intrinsic value is her bedrock. She doesn't need a standing ovation to feel significant. She feels it in the quiet of her own soul. She knows her talents, her heart, her mind are enough, not because they're flawless, but because they're hers. This self-worth isn't shaken by rejection or silence. It's forged in the fire of knowing herself, of choosing herself, of believing in herself when no one else does. It's a strength that doesn't shout. It whispers, steady and sure. Living authentically is, at its core, an act of self-love. It's her saying, "My happiness matters. My peace matters. My purpose matters." She doesn't sacrifice these for the sake of fitting in or keeping up. She protects them, nurtures them, builds a life around them. This isn't selfish. It's sacred. It's a recognition that she can't give her best to the world if she's not true to herself first. By honoring her own light, she shines brighter for others, not dimmer. In the end, a woman who lives authentically finds true freedom. Not the kind that comes with fanfare, but the kind that settles in her bones. She's free to be herself, to chase her passions, to craft a life that's fulfilling on her terms. She doesn't need society's nod or a crowd's cheer. She has her own approval, and that's enough. This is her triumph. A life not dictated by pressure, but defined by purpose. A life not crowded with noise, but rich with meaning. A life not borrowed, but boldly, beautifully her own. Emotional resilience. In a world where emotional support is often just a phone call away, where friends and loved ones stand ready to catch us when we fall, a woman without that constant safety net discovers something extraordinary. The power to hold herself up. Without the steady presence of others to lean on, she learns to navigate the wild terrain of her emotions alone, confronting challenges head-on and forging a mental stability that comes not from external hands but from the strength within. This isn't a journey she sought out of pride or isolation. It's one she's been thrust into, and from it, she emerges with a resilience that's as quiet as it is unbreakable. She doesn't just survive life's storms. She learns to dance in the rain, drawing on an inner well of fortitude to keep her steady. Emotional resilience isn't a trait she's born with. It's a skill she builds, piece by piece, through necessity and grit. When the voices of comfort are absent, when there's no one to vent to or seek solace from, she's left with herself. And that's where the transformation begins. It starts small. A moment of sadness she sits with instead of pushing away. A wave of anger she breathes through rather than unloading on someone else. A flicker of doubt she wrestles with in silence. These moments, though unremarkable on their own, stack up over time, teaching her that she doesn't need an audience to process her feelings or a rescuer to pull her through. She becomes her own anchor, her own guide. This process isn't about shutting down her emotions or pretending they don't exist. She's not a stoic statue, immune to pain or untouched by joy. She feels everything, deeply, fiercely, fully. The difference lies in how she handles it. Where others might turn outward, seeking a friend's ear or a partner's embrace, she turns inward, learning to sit with the rawness of her heart. She lets herself cry when the tears come, rage when the fire burns, laugh when the light breaks through. Not because someone's there to witness it, but because it's hers to feel. This willingness to face her emotions, unfiltered and unassisted, is the root of her strength. Without constant support, she becomes a master of her own emotional landscape. She learns to recognize the signs, the tightness in her chest when anxiety creeps in, the heaviness that signals grief, the spark that hints at hope. She doesn't run from these feelings or drown them in distraction. Instead, she meets them, studies them, understands them. She asks, "What's this telling me? What do I need right now?" And she answers herself, not with borrowed wisdom, but with her own. This self-awareness isn't just coping. It's thriving, a way to turn chaos into clarity, turmoil into growth. Building this resilience takes time. It's not a straight line or a quick fix. There are nights when the silence feels suffocating, when the weight of her emotions threatens to crush her. But she doesn't break. She breathes, she waits, she finds a way through. Not because she's invincible, but because she's learned she can. Each time she pulls herself back from the edge, she adds a brick to her foundation. Each time she faces a storm alone and emerges standing, she proves to herself that she's stronger than she thought. This is resilience in action. Not the absence of struggle, but the ability to rise from it, again and again. Her emotional stability comes from within, not from the reassurance of others. In a world where people often rely on friends to validate their feelings, am I right to be upset? Should I let this go? She trusts her own compass. She doesn't need a chorus of agreement to feel justified or a pat on the back to feel secure. She knows her emotions are valid because they're hers, and she's learned to manage them without outsourcing the work. This independence isn't cold. It's empowering, a quiet power that keeps her steady when the ground beneath her shakes. Picture her in a moment of crisis. A betrayal cuts deep, a loss leaves her hollow, a fear looms large. There's no one to call, no one to soften the blow. Yet she doesn't crumble. She sits with the pain, lets it wash over her, and then slowly, deliberately, she begins to mend. She might journal her thoughts, walk until her mind clears, or simply breathe until the storm passes. She doesn't need someone else to fix her because she's learned to fix herself. Not perfectly, not instantly, but enough to keep going. This self-reliance is her lifeline, a thread she clings to when the world feels dark. This resilience also teaches her to handle rejection with grace. When a relationship fades, when a door closes, when someone walks away, she doesn't take it as a verdict on her worth. She feels the sting. Oh, she feels it, but she doesn't let it define her. She's been alone with herself long enough to know her value doesn't hinge on others' approval. She processes the hurt, learns from it, and moves on. Not with bitterness, but with a quiet strength that says, I'm still here, and I'm still me. This ability to bend without breaking is a gift of her solitude, a proof that she can stand tall even when the wind howls. She becomes less reactive, too. Without the buffer of friends to vent to, she learns to pause before she acts. An insult that might once have sparked a fight now gets a measured response, or none at all. A disappointment that might have spiraled into despair now settles into perspective. She's not numb. She's deliberate, choosing how to spend her emotional energy rather than letting it spill unchecked. This control isn't suppression, it's mastery. A sign that she's not at the mercy of her feelings, but in conversation with them. Her resilience also shapes her boundaries. Alone, she's had to protect her own peace, and that's taught her what's worth her time and what isn't. She doesn't let guilt or expectation pull her into draining situations. She says no when she needs to, not out of spite, but out of self-respect. She's learned that she can't carry everyone's burdens, that her stability depends on guarding her own heart. This isn't isolation. It's wisdom, a recognition that she's stronger when she's whole, not stretched thin. In relationships, this emotional strength shines. She doesn't lean on others to fill her gaps because she's already filled them herself. She brings a fullness to her connections, not a neediness. She can love without clinging, support without losing herself, walk away without shattering. Her resilience ensures that she's not dependent on anyone's presence to feel okay. She's okay because she's worked to be. This balance makes her a rock for others, not because she has to be, but because she can be on her terms. She also finds a deeper self-worth. Without constant affirmation from friends, she's had to look within for validation, and she's found it. She sees her value in her perseverance, her kindness, her ability to rise after every fall. This internal praise is steadier than any external cheer. It doesn't fade with the crowd. She knows she's worthy not because someone says so, but because she's proven it to herself, time and again, in the quiet of her own struggle. This journey isn't without its shadows. There are moments when the lack of support feels like a void, when she longs for a voice to break the silence. But she pushes through, not because she's fearless, but because she's committed. She knows that relying on herself isn't just a necessity. It's a superpower. It's what lets her face life's twists with a steady gaze, what keeps her grounded when others might falter. She's not unbreakable. She's adaptable, bending with the blows but never snapping. Her emotional resilience is a quiet triumph. It's not loud victories or public displays. It's the soft strength of a woman who's learned to hold her own heart. She's not waiting for someone to save her from her feelings. She's saving herself every day, with every choice to keep going. This stability isn't rigid. It's fluid, a river that flows through her, carrying her forward no matter what comes. In the end, emotional resilience is her gift to herself. It's the ability to face difficulty without falling apart, to find peace without needing a hand to hold, to build a mind that's steady because it's hers. She's not diminished by the absence of constant support. She's deepened by it. A woman who's learned that true strength isn't borrowed but grown, not given but earned. She stands not as a fortress, but as a tree rooted deep, swaying with the wind, thriving through every season, all because she's found the courage to be her own shelter, prioritizing growth and self-care. In the stillness of solitude, away from the hum of social demands and the pull of others' expectations, a woman finds a rare gift, the space to turn her gaze inward. Without the clamor of companionship or the weight of external obligations, she shifts her focus to what truly matters, nurturing her mind, body, and spirit. This isn't a retreat from life but a reclamation of it, a deliberate choice to prioritize her own growth and well-being. In this quiet, she cultivates healthy boundaries, learns to trust her intuition, and builds a life that's not just lived, but deeply felt. A life where she thrives because she's chosen to care for herself first. This shift doesn't happen by accident. In a world that often glorifies busyness and self-sacrifice, choosing to prioritize herself is an act of rebellion, a quiet defiance against the notion that her worth lies in what she does for others. Solitude strips away the noise, the endless to-do lists, the chatter of opinions, the pressure to be everything to everyone, and leaves her with a clear view of her own needs. She asks, "What do I need to feel whole? What feeds my soul?" And in the absence of distraction, she hears the answers, soft but insistent, guiding her toward a path of self-nurture and growth. Growth, for her, is more than ambition or achievement. It's a holistic unfolding. It's the sharpening of her mind through curiosity, the strengthening of her body through care, the deepening of her spirit through reflection. In solitude, she has the freedom to explore these dimensions without compromise. She might pick up a book that challenges her thinking, letting new ideas sink in without the rush to discuss them. She might move her body, not for approval but for joy, running through the dawn or stretching into stillness. She might sit with her thoughts, letting them drift and settle, uncovering pieces of herself she'd overlooked. This isn't indulgence. It's investment, a commitment to becoming the best version of herself. Self-care, in this context, isn't a buzzword or a fleeting luxury. It's not bubble baths and spa days, though those have their place. It's a deeper practice, a steady tending to her inner world. She learns to nourish her mind with quiet moments of learning or creativity, her body with rest and movement, her spirit with peace and purpose. She recognizes that she can't pour from an empty cup, that neglecting herself doesn't serve anyone. Not her, not the world. So she fills that cup, deliberately, consistently, knowing that her well-being is the root of her strength. In solitude, she discovers the power of intention. Without the pull of others' schedules or the guilt of saying no, she becomes the architect of her time. She doesn't waste it on what drains her. Empty small talk, forced gatherings, mindless scrolling. Instead, she pours it into what lifts her. A project that sparks her passion, a walk that clears her head, a journal that holds her truths. She's selective not because she's selfish, but because she knows her energy is finite, and she wants to spend it on what aligns with her soul. This discernment is her freedom, a way to live with purpose rather than obligation. Setting boundaries becomes a natural extension of this care. Alone, She's had to protect her own space, and that's taught her its value. She learns to say no, not out of spite, but out of respect for herself. She doesn't let others overstep her limits, doesn't bend to demands that sap her strength. If a conversation turns toxic, she steps away. If a commitment feels heavy, she reconsiders. These boundaries aren't walls, they're gates, letting in what nurtures her and keeping out what doesn't. This isn't isolation, it's preservation, a way to keep her light burning bright. Trusting her intuition is another pillar of her growth. Without the constant input of friends or the sway of groupthink, she tunes into her own voice, that quiet, steady guide within. She's learned to trust it, not because it's infallible, but because it's hers. When a decision looms, she doesn't poll the crowd. She listens to her gut. When a path feels off, she pivots even if others don't understand. This reliance on her inner knowing isn't reckless. It's empowering, a sign that she's the captain of her ship, steering by her own stars. Solitude amplifies this trust. In the quiet, she hears her instincts more clearly. No one's there to drown them out with advice or doubt. She might feel a pull toward a new venture, a nudge to rest, a whisper to let go of something old, and she acts on it, not impulsively but confidently, because she spent enough time with herself to know when her intuition rings true. This faith in herself isn't blind. It's earned, honed through trial and reflection, a compass she's calibrated in the stillness. This focus on self-care and growth reshapes her self-image. Without others' constant feedback, she starts to see herself through her own eyes, not as a reflection of their praise or criticism, but as a woman of worth, capable and whole. She respects herself more, not because she's perfect, but because she's trying every day to grow, to care, to be. This self-respect isn't vanity. It's a quiet pride, a recognition that she deserves the time and energy she's giving herself. It lifts her chin, steadies her step, fuels her forward. Her growth isn't just inward, it's outward, too. By nurturing herself, she finds a deeper sense of purpose. Solitude gives her the space to dream, not the dreams others hand her, but the ones that flicker in her own heart. What does she want to create? What mark does she want to leave? She might pour herself into a craft, a cause, a vision that's uniquely hers, untainted by the need to impress. This purpose isn't loud. It's steady, a thread that weaves through her days, giving them meaning beyond the mundane. She also learns to savor the small things. Without the rush of social noise, she notices the world more. The way the light shifts at dusk, the feel of a deep breath, the sound of her own laughter. These moments aren't fillers, they're treasures. Reminders that growth isn't always grand, that self-care can be as simple as pausing to feel alive. She doesn't need a crowd to validate her joy. She finds it in the quiet, in the act of being present with herself. This journey isn't without struggle. There are days when solitude feels heavy, when the lack of others' voices leaves her questioning. Am I doing enough? Is this selfish? But she pushes through, not because she's fearless, but because she's committed. She knows that prioritizing herself isn't a betrayal of the world. It's a way to show up better for it. A woman who's cared for herself is a woman who can give from abundance, not depletion, who can face life with clarity, not exhaustion. Her boundaries and intuition also ripple into her relationships. When she does connect, it's from a place of strength, not need. She doesn't cling or compromise herself. She brings her full, nurtured self to the table. She can love without losing herself, support without draining herself, because she's already filled her own well. This balance makes her connections richer, not weaker, built on choice rather than dependency. She's not asking others to fix her. She's sharing her wholeness with them. This self-care also builds resilience. By tending to her mind, body, and spirit, she's better equipped to weather life's storms. A rested body doesn't buckle under stress. A clear mind finds solutions in chaos. A nurtured spirit bends but doesn't break. She's not invincible. She's prepared, fortified by the care she's given herself. This strength isn't loud. It's steady, a quiet power that carries her through when the world gets loud. In the end, Prioritizing growth and self-care in solitude is her triumph. It's not a rejection of others. It's an embrace of herself, a recognition that she's worth the effort. She's learned that caring for herself isn't selfish. It's essential, the foundation of a life well lived. She nurtures her mind to think clearly, her body to move strongly, her spirit to shine brightly, and she trusts her intuition to guide her when the path darkens. She sets boundaries not to push others away, but to pull herself closer to her truth, her peace, her potential. This is her gift, a life where she's not just surviving, but growing, not just existing, but thriving. Solitude doesn't diminish her. It deepens her, turning her into a woman who knows her worth, who cares for her flame, who walks her path with a quiet, unshakable grace. She's not waiting for the world to lift her up. She's lifting herself every day, with every choice to prioritize the one person she'll always have, herself. And in that, she finds not just strength, but a profound, enduring joy, purpose in life. Independence is more than a shield against the world. It's a lens, a way for a woman to see herself clearly and uncover what truly sets her soul alight. Free from the clamor of external voices and the tug of trivial distractions, she steps into a space where she can explore her passions, shape her long-term goals, and live a life steeped in meaning. Solitude doesn't confine her. It liberates her, offering the clarity to focus on what matters most. With no one else's agenda to follow, she becomes the author of her own story, crafting a purpose that's not borrowed or fleeting but deeply, uniquely hers. A compass that guides her toward a life of significance, unswayed by the noise of the unimportant. This journey toward purpose isn't a gift handed to her. It's a discovery she earns, in a world that often pulls people in a dozen directions. Chasing trends, pleasing others, filling time with the superficial. Independence gives her the freedom to pause. She's not caught up in the whirlwind of what's expected or what's popular. Alone with her thoughts, she can ask the questions that cut through the clutter. What stirs me? What do I want to build? What legacy do I want to leave? These aren't casual musings. They're the seeds of her purpose, planted in the quiet, nurtured by her own hands. Passion, she finds, is the spark that ignites this purpose. Without the chatter of a crowd to drown it out, she hears the whispers of what she loves. Those quiet callings she might have ignored in a busier life. Maybe it's the pull to create, writing words that move, painting colors that speak, crafting something tangible from nothing. Maybe it's a cause that tugs at her heart, helping others, healing the world, standing for something bigger. Or maybe it's simpler, a love for the earth, a joy in movement, a delight in learning. Whatever it is, independence lets her chase it, not as a hobby squeezed between obligations, but as a flame she tends with care. This exploration isn't rushed. Solitude gives her the luxury of time to try, to fail, to refine. She doesn't need to justify her passions to anyone or prove their worth to a skeptical audience. She can dive into them fully, letting them unfold at their own pace. She might spend hours lost in a book that lights up her mind, days tinkering with a project that feels right, weeks wandering a path others might not see. This freedom to follow her curiosity isn't aimless. It's purposeful, a way to uncover what makes her feel alive, what gives her days a pulse beyond mere routine. From these passions, she begins to shape her goals, not the short-term wins of a checklist, but the long-term visions that stretch across years. Independence means she's not tethered to someone else's timeline or sidetracked by their priorities. She can look ahead, 5 years, 10, a lifetime, and ask, where do I want to be? What do I want to have done? Her goals aren't about impressing others. They're about fulfilling herself. Maybe she dreams of mastering a craft, of building a sanctuary, of leaving a mark that echoes beyond her days. Whatever they are, they're hers, born from her heart, not borrowed from the world. This clarity of purpose keeps her focused. In a life without distractions, she learns to let go of what doesn't serve her. The petty dramas, the fleeting trends, the endless scroll of noise. They fall away, irrelevant in the face of what she's building. She doesn't waste her energy on what's temporary or what pulls her off course. She's selective, not out of disdain, but out of devotion to her passions, her goals, her meaning. This discipline isn't rigid. It's liberating, a way to pour herself into what lasts, what matters, what moves the needle of her life forward. Living with purpose also means living with intention. Every choice she makes, how she spends her mornings, who she lets into her world, what she says yes to aligns with her vision. She's not drifting through days, carried by the current of habit or expectation. She's steering, deliberately, toward a horizon she's chosen. This isn't about perfection. She stumbles, she doubts, but it's about direction. She knows where she's going, even if the path twists, and that knowing gives her a quiet strength, a steady rhythm to her steps. Independence fuels this intentionality. Without others' voices crowding her mind, she hears her own. Clear, unfiltered, true. She doesn't need approval to pursue her purpose or reassurance that it's worthwhile. She trusts herself, not because she's infallible, but because she's spent enough time alone to know what rings true for her. When a passion calls, she answers. When a goal forms, she chases it. This self-reliance isn't reckless. It's rooted, a faith in her own instincts that keeps her moving forward, even when the road is hers alone. Her purpose also deepens her resilience. When challenges come, and they do, she doesn't falter because she knows why she's here. A setback isn't a defeat. It's a detour, a lesson, a chance to grow stronger. She's not swayed by failure or discouraged by solitude because her purpose anchors her. It's the light she follows when the dark presses in, the fire that warms her when the cold bites. This isn't blind optimism. It's grit, a determination to keep going because what she's building means something, not just to the world, but to her. This sense of meaning transforms her daily life. The mundane becomes sacred when it's tied to her purpose. A quiet morning isn't just routine. It's fuel for her passion. A tough day isn't just struggle. It's a step toward her goal. She finds joy in the process, not just the outcome, because every moment is part of something bigger. This isn't a grand, spotlighted existence. It's a quiet richness, a life where the small things glow with significance because they're hers, chosen, purposeful. Her independence also lets her dream without limits. Without others' doubts or practicalities weighing her down, she can imagine boldly. What if she built something no one's seen? What if she changed a corner of the world? What if she lived a life so true it inspired others without a word? These aren't idle fantasies. They're possibilities she nurtures, seeds she plants in the fertile ground of her solitude. She doesn't need permission to dream big. She gives it to herself, and that's enough. This purpose isn't static, it evolves. As she grows, so does her vision. Passions shift, goals stretch, meaning deepens. Independence gives her the flexibility to adapt, to redefine what matters without guilt or explanation. She's not locked into someone else's script. She's writing her own, page by page, open to revision. This fluidity isn't weakness. It's strength, a willingness to stay true to herself as she changes, to let her purpose breathe and expand with her. Living with purpose also shapes her relationships. When she connects, it's not out of need but choice, not to fill a void but to share her light. She doesn't lean on others to give her meaning. She brings it with her. This makes her bonds richer, not thinner, built on mutual growth rather than dependency. She's not asking friends to define her purpose. She's inviting them to walk alongside it, to add their colors to her canvas without painting over her own. There are moments when this path feels lonely. Without the distraction of others, the weight of her purpose can press hard. Am I enough? Is this worth it? But she pushes through, not because she's fearless, but because she's committed. She knows that a life of meaning isn't always easy, that passion and goals demand effort, that distractions are the enemy of depth. Her independence is her shield, keeping her focused when the world tempts her to stray. Her purpose also brings her peace. Knowing why she's here, what she's chasing, quiets the restless questions that plague so many. She's not scrambling for validation or chasing shadows. She's rooted in something real, something hers. This isn't a smug satisfaction. It's a calm assurance, a sense that she's living right, even if it looks different from the norm. She doesn't need the world's applause. Her own heartbeat is enough, steady with the rhythm of her purpose. In the end, independence is the key to her purpose. It frees her to explore what she loves, to set goals that stretch her, to live a life that means something. Not to the masses, but to her. She's not distracted by the trivial because she's devoted to the eternal. Her passions, her dreams, her truth. Solitude doesn't empty her. It fills her, turning her into a woman who knows why she's here and walks that path with quiet, unshakable resolve. This is her victory. A life not dictated by noise, but defined by depth. Not scattered by the fleeting, but centered by the lasting. Not borrowed, but boldly, beautifully her own. She's not just passing through. She's building something, leaving something, living something that echoes beyond her days. And in that, she finds not just purpose, but a profound, enduring fulfillment. A life that's hers through and through, lit by the fire of her own making. Conclusion: a journey of self-discovery, strength, and wholeness. To walk alone is often misunderstood as a sign of isolation, a retreat into loneliness or a rejection of the world. But for a woman who chooses this path, it's anything but. It's not a wall she builds to keep others out. It's a door she opens to let herself in. Far from a descent into solitude's shadow, it's a bold ascent into self-discovery. A journey where she unearths her deepest truths, forges an unshakable strength, and learns to live fully as herself. This isn't a withdrawal from life. It's an embrace of it. A way to face the world with a confidence that radiates from within and a dignity that no one can take away. Going alone, she finds, is not a loss but a triumph. A path to wholeness that equips her to meet life's challenges with grace and power. This journey begins with a shift in perspective. Society often paints solitude as a void to be filled, a state to be pitted. Poor her all alone. But she sees it differently. She doesn't hear silence as emptiness. She hears it as possibility. She doesn't feel the absence of others as lack. She feels it as presence, her own presence, vibrant and enough. This reframing isn't denial. It's clarity, a recognition that being alone doesn't diminish her. It deepens her. It's in this space, free from the weight of others' expectations, that she begins to explore who she truly is, peeling back the layers of who she's been told to be. Self-discovery is the heart of this path. Without the mirror of a crowd to reflect her image, she holds up her own. She asks, "Who am I when no one's watching? What do I love when no one's judging? What do I fear when no one's there to soothe me?" These questions aren't easy. They demand honesty, vulnerability, a willingness to face the messy, beautiful truth of herself. But she dives in, not because she's fearless, but because she's curious. She wants to know herself, not the version polished for others, but the raw, real woman beneath. And in that knowing, she finds a freedom that no external bond can offer. This exploration isn't a one-time event. It's a lifelong unfolding. In solitude, she has the time to linger with herself, to sift through her dreams, her doubts, her desires. She might sit with a memory that stings, unraveling its lessons until it softens. She might chase a passion that lights her up, losing hours to its pull without apology. She might wrestle with a flaw, not to punish herself, but to grow beyond it. This isn't navel-gazing. It's excavation, a patient digging into the soil of her soul to unearth the gold within. Every discovery, every strength she finds, every weakness she softens, adds to the map of who she is, a map she draws with her own hand. From this self-discovery comes strength, a strength that's not borrowed or fragile, but forged in the fire of her own making. Alone, she's had to face life's storms without a shield of support, and that's taught her she's tougher than she thought. A heartbreak that might have broken her becomes a scar she wears with pride. A fear that once loomed large shrinks under her steady gaze. A challenge that seemed impossible bends to her will. She doesn't just survive these trials. She grows through them, building a resilience that's quiet but ironclad, a power that doesn't need a spotlight to shine. This strength isn't loud or showy. It's steady, rooted in the certainty that she can hold herself up, She's learned to pick herself up when she falls, to dust off the dirt and keep walking. Not because someone's there to cheer her on, but because she believes in herself. She's her own refuge, her own rock. A woman who knows that no matter what the world throws at her, she has the grit to stand tall. This isn't arrogance, it's trust, a faith in her own capacity that's been tested and proven in the crucible of solitude. Living fully as herself is the fruit of this journey. Without the pressure to conform, she can be unapologetically her quirks, passions, flaws, and all. She doesn't need to shrink to fit someone's mold or stretch to meet their gaze. She can laugh too loud, dream too big, rest too long, if that's what feels true. She can chase what she loves, say what she thinks, walk where she wants, because her life isn't a performance. It's a truth. This authenticity isn't just freedom, it's fulfillment, a way to live with a wholeness that comes from being exactly who she's meant to be. This wholeness equips her to face the world with confidence. She doesn't step into a room needing approval. She carries it with her. She doesn't falter under judgment. She knows her worth isn't up for debate. She doesn't shrink from challenge. She's met harder ones within herself and won. This confidence isn't brash. It's quiet, a steady glow that lights her way. It's the kind that doesn't shout, "I'm here," but whispers, "I know who I am, and that's enough." It's a power that comes not from others' nods, but from her own nod to herself. Dignity is her companion on this path. To walk alone, to choose herself, to build a life on her terms. That takes a grace that's rare and profound. She carries herself with a poise that doesn't bend to the world's whims, a pride that doesn't need a crown. She's not diminished by solitude. She's elevated by it. A woman who's faced her shadows and found her light, who's wrestled with her doubts and claimed her strength. This dignity isn't haughty. It's earned, a quiet nobility that shines in her eyes, her step, her very being. This journey isn't without its shadows. There are moments when the world's noise creeps in, when the lack of others feels heavy, when the path feels too solitary. She might wonder, am I missing something? Is this too much? But she presses on, not because she's immune to doubt, but because she's committed to the truth she's found. She knows that going alone isn't a punishment. It's a privilege, a chance to build something no one can take away. Her independence isn't a burden. It's a wings, lifting her above the fray to a place of clarity and power. Her solitude also deepens her connections, paradoxically. When she does choose to let others in, it's not out of need but desire, not to fill a gap but to share her fullness. She brings a self that's whole, not fractured, a strength that supports without breaking, a confidence that inspires without preaching. Her relationships aren't crutches. They're gifts, enriched by the woman she's become alone. She doesn't lean. She stands offering a hand not because she must, but because she can. This path redefines what it means to live well. Society might measure a good life by friends, accolades, busyness, but she measures it by depth, by truth, by purpose. She doesn't need a crowd to feel alive. She feels it in the quiet beat of her own heart, in the steady breath of her own resolve. She doesn't need the world stage. She's built her own, a space where she shines not for applause, but for herself. This isn't a lesser life. It's a greater one, richer for its simplicity, stronger for its singularity. Her journey alone is her legacy. She's not just passing through. She's leaving a mark, not in the noise of fame, but in the quiet of being. She's a testament to what's possible when a woman chooses herself, not out of selfishness, but out of reverence for the life she's been given. She shows that strength isn't loud, that confidence isn't borrowed, that dignity isn't bestowed. It's grown, from within, through the courage to walk alone. In the end, going alone isn't isolation, it's illumination. It's a journey where she discovers her depths, builds her might, and lives her truth, facing the world not as a shadow, but as a force. She's not less for it. She's more, a woman who's found her center, who stands with a confidence that's hers alone, who walks with a dignity that's unshakable. This is her victory. A life not dictated by others, but defined by herself. Not emptied by solitude, but filled by her own presence. Not borrowed, but boldly, beautifully, wholly her own. And in that, she doesn't just survive the world. She transforms it one steady, solitary step at a time. And that brings us to the end of this journey together. If you've made it this far, I want to take a moment to say thank you, truly, from the bottom of my heart. Your time, your attention, and your willingness to dive into these ideas with me mean more than words can express. Here at ZenLight 8, we're all about shining a light on the strength within, and it's because of you, our incredible community, that we can keep exploring, reflecting, and growing together. If this resonated with you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so we can continue this conversation. Until next time, keep walking your path, trusting your light, and living your truth. See you soon.